What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video here on the channel. Today we have for you guys another fantastic TV tier list video, but it is not going to be like any others that we have done on this channel because, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the 100th video on this channel. That is right, the video that you are watching right now, part 1 to this tier list, is the 100th video that I've made for this YouTube channel. I cannot thank you guys enough for getting me to this point, supporting me over the past 3 years now. Absolutely fantastic to see the growth in this channel and how much you guys have inspired me to continue with it. So once again, just thank you so much for that. But I wanted to go all out with this one because 100 videos is a huge milestone. And I have for you guys what is sure to be the biggest tier list that we have ever done here. Arguably the biggest video we have ever made for this channel. Bigger than the tournaments, bigger than the top 100 list, bigger than the podcast, bigger than even the pilot project, my friends. We have a tier list here consisting of every single TV show that I have ever seen here. You can see if we scroll down, look at all the great TV shows we have, and admittedly some not so great as well. But it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. The total amount here, 768 different TV shows for us to rank on this tier list. So naturally, because of the fact that it is so huge, this is going to be split into multiple parts as well. I'm not going to be able to go and give super in-depth commentary on every single one. For the most part, it's just going to be really snappy, really quick, just, a brief description of the show, and then we'll rank it on our tier list, consisting of the world famous 7 tiers there, ranging from God tier to the infamous bottom of the barrel. Trust me, they are all going to get used at one point or another in this tier list here. And the shows in question here, huge variety: sitcoms, dramas, game shows, reality shows, cooking shows, YouTube web shows as well in there. Tremendous amount of variety for this tier list here. When I say every single TV show, I mean it, my friends. It can range from the entire show I've seen to half an episode. I wanted to go all out for this one, and that is exactly what we have done. So with that in mind, let's get started here. One last thing as well is you might notice that these are not in alphabetical order. I actually did spend a couple hours the other day putting them in alphabetical order and then accidentally refreshed this page and it lost all that progress. So it's just what it is right now, but it's not really a big deal because they're all going to get mixed up when they're on the tier list anyway. So with that in mind, let's jump into it, folks. Beginning with 1000 Ways to Die. If you look at my 5th grade yearbook, this was apparently one of my top 3 favorite shows alongside X-Play and SNL. I'm not sure how that happened because it's definitely not appropriate for a 5th grader to be watching this show. On Spike TV, of course, a guilty pleasure of sorts. I mean, it's very silly and over the top, but you can get some laughs out of it. I'll go good tier with this. Not going to be a show I'm going to watch every single day, but every once in a while, a little bit of nostalgia there as a throwback. Not too bad. 13 Reasons Why, extremely polarizing. Some people love it, some people hate it. I really, really enjoy this show. I'm going to go great tier with this one. I'm seeing past season 2. The only thing I've seen up until the point was a few episodes into the 2nd season. I really loved the first one. Season 2 is just kind of okay. Decided to just jump ship after that because I heard from most people that, following that into 3 and 4, definitely not worth your time whatsoever. Of course, season 4, arguably the most infamous TV season out there. So based on what I've seen, I'm going to go great tier, but you can definitely disagree with me on that one because I know a lot of people would say that it is one of the worst dramas out there. Some people would say it's one of the best. So, everyone's got a different opinion on there. Schitt's Creek next up. I'm going to go meh tier with this. I think it's very overrated personally. It just, it's okay at times. There's a couple elements to it that I like. Of course, I like Eugene Levy as Johnny, as one of the lead characters. I thought he's pretty good. But for the most part, just very, very overhyped. The fact that it won, every Emmy in its last season, just absolutely swept all the comedy categories there. Just did not feel justified at all to me. So I'm just going to go meh tier. Angie Tribeca here. I'm going to say good tier with this. I've seen a few episodes past the pilot I talked about in the pilot project, and I'm starting to understand it a little bit more. It definitely has that, Naked Gun sort of parody spoof type of feel to it, which is kind of interesting to see in a TV form because you don't really see many shows like that. I think Rashida Jones does a good job here. It's not amazing. It's not something like I'd recommend to everyone out there, but it's a little more niche and kind of fills a different sort of role than most shows. So, I give it points for that, kind of being a little more unique than most sitcoms out there. So, give it a good tier there. 1v100. Rest in peace, Bob Saget, of course. One of the most underappreciated game shows out there. Got to go great tier with this. What a classic watching as a kid there. Of course, one person competing against 100 other people. They called the mob in trivia questions. Simple format, but very, very effective. Got to go great tier with that. Two Broke Girls. Listen, guys. I have preached the word of Two Broke Girls for years now on this channel and otherwise. I am sick of people hating on it. I am sick of people calling it one of the worst shows. It is God tier, and I will have no debate in the comments over that. Absolutely incredible show. Matt Stoney here, of course, one of the many web shows and YouTube shows we'll have. Of course, he runs one of his YouTube channels there, does a lot of competitive eating stuff. I really don't know how you can be a fan of food culture or cooking culture and not appreciate competitive eating or speed eating like he does. I got to go A1 tier. The fact that you just watch it as a sport, right? Just like any other sport, basketball, football, these super athletic guys that are doing, inhuman things that you couldn't possibly do, and just being impressed with that and like seeing it in a completely different way. That's how I see it with anything competitive eating. Matt Stoney, kind of the poster child for that especially. So got to go A1 tier there. 2020 next up. A lot of these news magazines, documentary type of shows, I think they're just okay. I think 2020 is a little bit stronger than most of them, so I'll go good tier. There was a phase where I was into 2020, so I'll give it a little more props than some of the other ones here. 21 Jump Street. I'm going A1 tier. Johnny Depp right now, of course. Pretty relevant topic there, but just looking at the show itself, fantastic show for sure. Cheesy 80s drama, but in the best way possible. Sean Chandler talks about, baby. Sean talks about movies here. Easily one of my biggest influences on YouTube, and I know from Mike as well. He shouted him out a few videos ago during his Q&A session that he did on his channel. Absolutely love Sean Chandler, man. He just has this very inviting, optimistic sort of tone with his videos. Doesn't come off cynical or pessimistic like most critics do. Has that family-friendly sort of vibe to him as well. He's got a bunch of young kids himself, so always great to see his family represented in the videos. Just a very stand-up guy, very positive energy coming off of him. So I got to go A1 tier for that. 24, of course, one of the most classic dramas out there. Got to go A1. That pilot, man, is stupendous there. Love it. Vsauce here, another one we got to go A1 tier with. Michael Stevens, just a legend on YouTube here. Anything with the technology or science there is absolutely awesome to see. Of course, the spin-off channels, Vsauce 2 and 3, of course, hosted by Kevin and Jake, are fantastic as well. You can't deny the legacy of Vsauce, man. The music alone is like so, iconic and kind of infamous in some ways, kind of memeable as well, but just absolutely incredible stuff. Really gets you thinking about the world and kind of seeing it in a different light there. NYPD Blue here, classic police drama there. One of my dad's favorites, in fact. I'm going to put it in the great tier. I've seen a handful of episodes here and there. It might be a little bit dated than some, but what really stands out is just how mature it is compared to most network dramas of the time. It was all throughout the 90s and early 2000s. This ran for 12 seasons, in fact, so one of the longest running shows on this list. And for it being network TV, for it being on ABC, definitely has a lot more mature and adult content than most dramas out there. So that's definitely something you can appreciate it for. Super, super influential as well. Most police dramas made nowadays probably wouldn't exist without its influence there. So for that alone, got to go at least great tier. 30 Rock. Listen, I've talked about this show a billion times on this channel. I'm just not a fan of it. I do like the pilot episode, I will say, and I do like the cast on it. I think Alec Baldwin is pretty funny, but for the most part, the fact that this show is so beloved and so, talked about in so many different circles online just really, really irritates me because it's just not all that good, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I just think it's very overrated myself, so I'm going to put it in the bad tier. 30-minute meals, of course, one of the many, many cooking shows we're going to see on this list. Classic stand and stir, as they say. I'm going to say good tier. It's probably between good and great for me, but I just haven't seen it in quite some time. This was definitely one that I watched all the time growing up. Rachel Ray is the host. She's just doing her thing. I don't really have anything against her necessarily, but I'm not like a diehard fan either. Most of the other projects that I've seen her in, just not really that interesting to someone like me. Definitely not, the target demo that she's after for sure. But her classic 30-minute meals, you really can't go wrong there. Food Network, of course, very iconic. Drake and Josh here. Oh, man. This one hurts because, of course, we got to go A1 with Drake and Josh because it's a nostalgic, it's a childhood favorite, of course, from Nickelodeon. But just seeing all this stuff about Drake Bell, man, and seeing how the post-Drake and Josh fame has kind of got to him and some of his behavior, just not even the stuff that's like downright illegal that he's done with, texting minors and stuff. I mean, past all that, it's just him being very selfish and being very self-centered, the way that he's treated and badmouthed his co-stars and Josh Peck. I mean, there's just so much moral just ickiness with him, and that's like the thing that hits me because you looked up to him as a kid, the same way that people looked up to Bill Cosby, the same way people looked up to Danny Masterson from that 70s show. And so this was my generation of that. And that just really hurts to see all the bad stuff that's come out about him since the show has, been on air and such. And just how the legacy of it's just been tarnished because of his erratic behavior. So hurts to say that, but, if we're just judging based on the show itself and not taking into account the people behind it, then for sure it's A1 tier because it's absolutely fantastic. Deserved its spot in the top 100 list for sure. Some people are commenting on that. How could this childhood show be, on par with like a Cheers or Seinfeld in the sitcom world? But let me tell you guys, if you were there, you understand it. Third Rock from the Sun. Maybe controversial. I'm going God tier. I am going God tier, man. That is an incredible pilot. Of course, my favorite from that series, John Lithgow. What an amazing lead there. Of course, the creators also did that 70s show, fantastic sitcom. Really nothing to say bad about it, personally. Really have nothing negative to say about Third Rock, so I'm going to go top tier with that. The 4400 on the CW, just going that tier, honestly. Just very middle of the road. I got nothing against reboots. You guys know I'm usually for them because so many people will be against them. So kind of taking that balance into consideration. But I don't know. This one it doesn't do anything for me. The sci-fi sort of fantasy type stuff, that's just not really in my wheelhouse. So just kind of middle of the pack for me. 48 Hours, same idea here. Again, one of those news magazine type shows. Not really a big fan of the news myself. Don't really watch it all that much. And the way that CBS kind of handles this stuff just feels very, they don't really have a lot of personality behind it. It's just so vanilla is the best way I can describe it compared to like even a Dateline or something I feel like has a little bit more character to it. So I don't know. For me, this is just very middle of the road as well. Bart Baker here, very iconic from the late 2000s, early 2010s on YouTube there. Did a lot of the music parodies back in the day. He's kind of riding the line between great and good there, but for nostalgia purposes, I'll put him in great tier because I was a huge fan of him back in the day. Obviously, nowadays, he's doing like, the TikTok stuff, and he moved to China a few years ago. He's been really big in like Chinese TikTok culture, if you can believe it, which is crazy to see the shift there. And recently came back doing like the cryptocurrency stuff. So definitely not, as big of a name as he once was. But in his heyday, he could put out some really, really good content there. I had all his songs memorized back in the day for sure. So I'll put it in great tier just for the nostalgia of it. Bar Rescue with John Taffer here. Basically kitchen nightmares, but bars instead of actual restaurants. I'm going to go A1 tier. It's definitely a guilty pleasure show, but dude, there was a period back over quarantine and over COVID where I was really getting into this show, just absolutely loved it. John Taffer, just an eccentric personality for sure, definitely like kind of has that Gordon Ramsay level of rage and such, but just a really, really fun guy to just see his process go through, because it's so over the top and it's so grandiose. That's what makes it, good entertainment for TV. Obviously not very realistic in the real world sense, but for a TV show, definitely very fun to see that process come through. The Annoying Orange. Everyone's had their beef with The Annoying Orange. I don't need to be a broken record here and retread the past and say what a billion other people have said. It's just not a good show. It's just not a good show at the end of the day. I'm going bad tier. Kim Possible, another nostalgic one for me, obviously watching this on the Disney Channel growing up. I'm going to go good tier. It wasn't one of my all-time favorites, but definitely never had anything against it. Did not like the live-action movie at all that they did a couple years back with Allison Hannigan as one of the leads there. It was not good whatsoever. But, of course, the classic animated series there, I would say good tier is fair. Philip DeFranco here on YouTube, very, very iconic, easily one of the biggest news YouTubers out there right now. As stated before, not really big on watching the news, but at least he brings a little more personality to it. Focuses less on like very dense, heavy subjects like, war, COVID, doesn't really cover those as much, definitely does a lot of the fluffy, lighter pieces, a lot of pop culture stuff, of course. I'm going to say great tier just because I have a lot of respect for how he has built his brand up and, his humble beginnings as just someone who is, conscious about the world and then brought that to a more mainstream, bigger platform like YouTube. So I have to give him some, credence there. And overall, I'd say great tier is adequate for his performance. Miss Mojo here. We have a bunch of the Watch Mojo channels on this list because they, again, are one of the biggest YouTube series here on the platform. I'm going to say Miss Mojo is in the great tier. I actually think they're a little bit stronger at times than Watch Mojo, just because of the fact that a lot of the topics in particular that they make videos about are a little more in my wheelhouse. They do a lot of the sitcom and TV related lists, which makes a lot of sense because most TV nowadays is watched mostly by a female demographic. So obviously that's what they're targeting there. So yeah, I'm going to say great tier for them. Ooh, very controversial figure. Next up here, we have Mark Dice here on YouTube, another one that does a lot of politics, a lot of news-related stuff. Very right-wing leaning, very conservative, Republican-based stuff. Hates Biden, absolutely loves Trump, is against Dr. Fauci, thinks COVID's a myth. Every, Republican talking point you can throw out, he's all behind it. Hates PC culture, hates mask mandates, all that stuff. So as far as if I agree with his policies, absolutely not, right? Have no respect for him as a person as far as, whatever he is spewing out and just putting out in this huge platform that he has and just, brainwashing these people essentially. Cannot get past that. But I do have to say, I do respect him a little bit just for the fact that he has built up that brand as big as it is. And that's the one thing about, any conservative outlet like Fox News as well in a more mainstream sense. I mean, they have a huge, huge chokehold on cable news and TV news and such. And I've talked about on my podcast before that is something that, can even outdo just regular TV at times. That is something that those people want to hear. They want to be in their echo chamber, hearing those talking points come back to them because it makes them feel comfortable with that. And they don't want to see a more mainstream version of that, whatever that means to them. So in that respect, I give him a little bit of, respect, I guess, in the sense that he's built up that brand, but I'm still going to go in the bad tier with him because I just cannot get over his viewpoints myself. I just do not agree with him in that. 60 Minutes there, of course, one of the most iconic documentary, news type shows as well there. I'm going to go great tier. I have a lot of respect for it. Definitely something that my parents watch all the time comparably. But yeah, I do enjoy it every once in a while. I like some of their newscasters on there. But, it's not something I'm going to watch every single day, but I could sit down and watch, an episode or two if I needed to. So I'll go great tier with it. Video Game High School, man, really taking it back with this one. Of course, the guys over at Rocket Jump producing this one, Freddie Wong and company. I'm going to go great tier with them. This was really one of those shows that, really expanded upon what the idea of YouTube could be and what the idea of a web series could be. This was like one of the first ones I remember, at least, that had a real budget, that felt like a real TV show, even though it was doing it in a platform like YouTube, which was pretty unheard of at the time, because I think this came out like 2011, so that was a long time ago now, and that was like way before, that was a mainstream idea of having YouTube as like a big channel to promote these like high budget, high story arc type shows like this. Had a lot of action to it as well, had a lot of effects, which was right up Rocket Jump's league, so that was like right in their wheelhouse there of like what they were known for, and just taking that to the next level essentially and building upon that was really, really something to see. So I'm gonna go great tier with them. Worth It here from BuzzFeed. Man, you cannot hate on Worth It. If you're a foodie like me, if you like cooking shows, can't hate on Worth It at all. Their travel and cooking series, of course, Steven and Andrew, so much chemistry as the leads there, and then Adam, of course, gotta love Adam as well, the cameraman. Just very simple series, just going around restaurants around the LA area, trying different, each episode will be centered around one dish or one type of food, and they'll try 3 different versions of it at 3 different prices. So they'll have a cheap one, medium, and then a really expensive one to see, what this very simple dish or simple ingredient can look like in these different forms. And then at the end, they'll say what their favorite one is and if it's worth it at that given price. So that's kind of the whole gimmick of it. But I really love it. I really, really enjoy it. Didn't really love the later seasons of it. I thought they got a little more gimmicky at times, but between like 2 and 4, I thought were my favorite seasons personally of the show. So I'm going to say A1 tier for sure. Another one from BuzzFeed here, Tasty more specifically, Making It Big with the host Alvin, of course, who's a huge YouTube chef. I don't love this one as much. I think it's a little more gimmicky, but I'll still put it in the great tier. Just really interesting to see the process of how some of these come out. Like, how do you make, a giant version of spaghetti, right? How do you make something like that? How do you make meatballs that are just like the size of like a basketball, right? How does that come together? That's kind of what you are there for, to see like the process of it more or less. Because you got to imagine at that scale, it's probably not going to taste as good, right? So when they're actually trying it, maybe hamming it up a little bit for the camera, but just the actual cooking itself, very fascinating there. So say great tier. 8 Simple Rules, man, what a great sitcom, super underrated, of course. This one kills me a little bit because I only have to put it at the great tier, unfortunately, given the fact that the first season is excellent. The first season is one of my favorite seasons of TV, period. Absolutely adore it, with John Ritter, of course, as the lead there. Rest in peace, man. What an absolute legend. And then, of course, with his untimely passing at the start of season 2, the back half of season 2 and then into season 3, where they brought in David Spade as, the replacement, just wasn't as good in my opinion. It was okay. It tried to be, still have that energy and such, but you just can't replace John Ritter like that. There was just no way they were going to be able to top what they did in season 1. So balancing those two, somewhere in the middle there, I think great is justifiable. Gourmet Makes here from Bon Appetit, with Claire Savitz, of course, as the host here. A little gimmicky at times, another one that's kind of in between great and good here, but I'll go good this time just because the episodes are pretty long. I don't really have the patience to sit through this one as much, because sometimes they're like close to an hour long, and for a web cooking show, that's a lot of time to give up for something like this. Obviously the gimmick is like, how do you make Lucky Charms, what ingredients, what the process is like for that. Kind of interesting at times, but after you see, a couple episodes, you kind of get the idea that it's pretty formulaic, it's pretty repetitive at times. So another reason why you're not going to like binge the entire season's worth of videos all in one sitting there. You really take your time with this one, but pretty fascinating at times for sure. So I'll go good tier. Man, the legend himself, Scott the Woz, up next here. I mean, you gotta go God tier with Scott the Woz. I literally have never met a person that's seen it that doesn't like it. I mean, he is just an absolute legend here. Arguably, if like AVGN, for example, was the biggest and most influential gaming show of early YouTube, then Scott the Woz for sure is the most influential current gaming show on YouTube here. So much so that the channel G4 actually picked up Scott the Wasp for syndication, which I think is the first time ever that any web show or any YouTube show has actually been put on regular TV, like actual cable TV in syndication like that. I've never heard of such a thing. And when G4 rebranded just last year, that's exactly what they did, and it was a huge success for them, rightfully so, because Scott the Wasp is excellent. So gotta go God tier with him. Cyanide and Happiness, man. Another one that's pretty nostalgic for me and Matt. I love watching these shorts. I'll go great tier. I don't really watch them all that much anymore, but back in the day for sure, you could have a blast watching these guys. Just super goofy, super silly, cartoons, but could be pretty raunchy at times too. Of course, the Big Sausage Pizza, probably their most iconic segment there. Just get a smile off of that one for sure. So I'll go great tier with them. 911 Lone Star here. So actually I'll do these next two fairly quickly. 911 Lone Star, I'm going to go A1 tier, and then 911 I'll go great tier. Really got into it over quarantine and over COVID. I was watching it with Steph. Haven't really seen much of the recent seasons. I've heard this season actually of 911 season 5 has been pretty hit or miss. There's been some really high highs and some really low lows there. So a little more inconsistent than most of these like first responder type shows. And then Lone Star, definitely prefer that one. Rob Lowe is excellent on that show. Really like the season opener this year with when they were trying to save the firehouse. That was really well done. So that one I'll go in A1, and then the OG one I'll go in great tier. Brain Games here from National Geographic. Vaguely, have some nostalgia with this one. I watched it quite a bit as a kid. I'll go good tier. Maybe not the most memorable show out there, but not terrible either. Just kind of something to pass the time by. Kill half an hour here and there. It's definitely not going to be something that's like going to stick with you, like I said, but it can be pretty entertaining at times. Thug Notes here, absolutely iconic web series. You got to go at least great tier with Thug Notes. The whole gimmick is like, they take these classic, iconic literature like Romeo and Juliet or something, or, Lord of the Flies or something, and they have this really beefy, it's a thug, he's a rapper, and he comes out and he basically gives you like the Spark Notes version of these classic books, but in like the most like ghetto, way possible, and it's just the contrast between it's hilarious. So definitely, it's very like early YouTube, very early internet type of humor, but for its time, it was definitely very popular and very kind of revolutionary in the sense that like this was another one that kind of showed the power of what the internet could be back in its heyday. So I'll go great tier for that. A Little Late with Lily Singh. Oh man, this is an example of how not to transition from YouTube to the mainstream. What a bad show. What a terrible show, man. I mean, late night shows already are kind of in that hit or miss sort of state. There's some good ones. There's definitely a lot of kind of just mediocre bad ones. But this one just did not hold up at all. I mean, it got absolutely destroyed from every corner online and every corner in mainstream outlets as well that like just traditional TV. So didn't really hit, fans with any of them. So me neither, because putting in the bad tier there, you can see just not a good representation at all. I Spent a Day With, also known as Anthony Padilla's interview show. I'll go good tier with it. This is another one that like don't really have the patience to sit through an entire video of this, because sometimes they're pretty long and sometimes the topics just aren't that interesting to me, or just not something that you really want to see all that much of. But there are some good episodes. I do like the video where he talks with Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube. That's probably his most popular one there. Just really interesting to see, how she looks at YouTube and kind of how the CEO position has changed, or like her, thought process has changed over the years, and how YouTube has expanded off of that. Kind of interesting. So, but overall, kind of just middle of the pack there. Like I said, just not something I'm going to sit through an entire episode of most of the time. Abbott Elementary, man, another one that we got to go at top tier with, of course. Probably the biggest comedy show of at least the past, 2 or 3 years for sure, arguably of the past decade, I would say. I mean, easily one of the ABC's best, easily one of the best mockumentaries out there. You could pretty much place it at the top of any category that it falls into, and you wouldn't be, unjustified in doing so. And for me, just overall for TV shows, this is going to be the next Parks and Rec. This is going to be the next, The Office. I can predict it right now. Have full confidence in this one. This is just going to go huge in the upcoming years, upcoming seasons. Season 1 ended awesome, so I can't wait to see what they do next. Black Lady sketch show here. Speaking of Abbott Elementary, the creator Quinta Brunson got her start on this HBO sketch series. I'm gonna go good tier. Sketch comedy is another one that kind of has that hit or miss quality to it. There's definitely a lot on here that we'll talk about later that I think are better than this, but for HBO, considering that they don't really do this style all that much, it's pretty impressive to see what they have going for them. And I think this one's honestly not that bad. So I'll go in good tier for this one. Access Hollywood. Most of these tabloid shows I'm just going to put in the meh tier. They're all pretty much the same for me. So Access Hollywood doesn't really do much, honestly. Adam Ruins Everything, very creative show. I'm going to go great tier for sure. I mean, between this, Carbonaro, and then obviously Impractical Jokers, that was kind of like, those were the titans of true TV, at least for me, when, they were hitting their stride and hitting their peaks back in the day. And Adam Ruins Everything, this is a really good example of how to do YouTube to mainstream TV, because Adam Conover, of course, from College Humor, that's where he got his start. It was a segment within College Humor that they made into an entire show, and it translated really well because you can get these really in-depth commentaries on, sometimes trivial things, but sometimes really dense topics as well. Kind of did what John Oliver does, but in a more kind of goofy YouTube-esque way, if that makes sense. So I'll definitely go great tier with that. Adventure Time, this is going to piss some people off, but I'm just going to go meh tier with it. It's never really been my thing. I've always been more in the regular show camp, so don't come at me, but Adventure Time just kind of whatever to me. America's Got Talent here. I understand why it's popular. I get why it's big. It's just so cheesy is the thing. It's just so cheesy, man. Everyone has talked about how these talent shows and such always have very sappy storylines with their contestants. My father died and I have to make him proud. My wife got cancer and I have to make her proud, etc., etc. And that's very tragic, and I'm glad that these people are finding an outlet to cope with those things, but it's just so formulaic. Every single season it's how many people are we going to have to make proud here by singing on a national stage, So I'll give it a good tier because I can see why it's popular, and there have been some segments that I think are pretty interesting. I always look, because the majority of them are going to be singing stuff, which you can find pretty much anywhere on any talent show, but the acts that I like are the magicians, because I like the magic type stuff and watching magic shows, and then the comedians, because they're very underrated and they never win, but they always should, because they get some really funny people to come up on America's Got Talent every once in a while. But the singing stuff, dancing stuff, those are kind of, there's whole shows built around those already, so it's just kind of, you can find those anywhere, like I said. But I'll go good tier overall. Aliens in America, it's not bad per se. It's just very underwhelming. It's just very vanilla, ironically. It's kind of between good and meh, to be honest with you. But I'll put it in good tier just for the fact that it's a little bit more underrated than I think most people would give it credit for. Because, CW, of course, their stride was definitely never with sitcoms or comedy. And this was kind of one that, if you wanted to see what they, their take on it would be, this would be a decent starting point, I'd say. And Lindsay Shaw is pretty good in it too, so can't, disrespect her at all. So I'll go good tier. Alfred Hitchcock Presents, of course, the iconic 50s anthology series before the Twilight Zone even, so definitely gives, gets a lot of credit there as far as being the first to introduce that style, in a mainstream way. But this show is just extremely dated, so I'm going to go good tier, kind of balancing those two. Because, if you want a good anthology series, just watch The Twilight Zone. There's no real reason to watch this as opposed to it. So. Alias here with Jennifer Garner. At her peak, man, Jennifer Garner was pretty fucking good. Was a pretty good actress, and J.J. Abrams could make some really interesting action sci-fi shows. I'm gonna go great tier. I think it's pretty underrated, honestly. All in the Family here, iconic sitcom, of course, from the 70s there, Archie Bunker. Can't say anything really bad about him because he's just so iconic. As far as the show as a whole, it's definitely dated for sure, but you know, for what it is, it's very like you have to give respect to it because it's so revolutionary and it's so unapologetic. You know, that's the thing. It was so brash and it was so in your face about what it was talking about and the way that Archie Bunker was as a character. Very brash, very in your face, very unapologetic type show. Give respect to that because most shows were very clean and sanitized back in the day, and then All in the Family comes out and just throws a huge grenade into the sitcom landscape and just shakes everything up, and it sticks with you, that's for sure. So that's why it's lasted so long. So I'll go good tier, all things considered. All That here, speaking of sketch comedy, for sure, All That, essentially Nickelodeon's SNL, that's how I always saw it back in the day. I'm going to go great tier. Really, really funny sketches for sure. Lots of people, man, from the show had an insane career going forward. I mean, if you want to like track the history of it, All That leads to The Amanda Show, which leads to Drake and Josh, which leads to iCarly, which leads to Dan Schneider being a huge thing, which branches off to other things too, like What I Like About You with Amanda Bynes, and then Kenan Thompson as well gets his start here, which leads to Kenan and Kel and Good Burger, and then he goes on to do SNL, and he's the longest running member of the SNL cast, still on it to this day, and that show would be very different if not for his presence there, and then that would stretch out because SNL in and of itself is super influential and iconic, and just in the past, 15 years since Kenan or so has been on it, then that stretches out to other projects and such, like his self-titled show. So there's a lot of things that All That has bled out to over the years, and maybe I'm giving it too much credit here, but it is pretty interesting to see the history, the progression of it, how it has affected so many different elements in the comedy TV landscape there. So I gotta go great for that. Alvin and the Chipmunks, kind of just whatever to me, honestly. Just kind of forgettable, honestly. For a Saturday morning cartoon, not the worst thing, but far from the best. Amazing World of Gumball. I honestly think that Gumball's kind of overlooked. I am surprised by how many people just flat out say that Gumball is a bad show. I've always considered it one of Cartoon Network's better ones. I mean, the art style is a little bit hard to digest, I guess, at times, but it makes her a very interesting. It definitely strikes the contrast with it, with sort of the live action elements and the cartoon elements, makes it definitely something that you won't find in any other show. So for that alone, definitely get some props there. But I always thought the humor was good, the writing was solid, voice acting was good. I mean, it never really had anything against it, in my opinion. So why not go good tier? American Auto. This is probably going to be a pretty controversial pick as well, because I love this show, and yet so many people do not understand why it's so good. I mean, I've seen some reviews, some outlets talk about its praise, but most people, I think, are just really, skeptical of this one, which is understandable because if all you know of it is it's the guy from Superstore, right, Justin Spitzer, then that's not the most compelling argument to watch the show, because Superstore is pretty bad in my opinion, and if that's all you were going off of, then I could see how you'd be pretty unsure about this one. But once you get past that, then you jump into it. It has a lot of different layers to it. Every character is great on the show. Every actor is great on the show. I mean, this is just very, very overlooked. This honestly could tie Abbott as far as one of my favorites, but the only reason it's going to A1 tier more or less is because it just doesn't have the same cultural, phenomenon level of success like Abbott does. So, but it definitely with season 2, if it gets to season 2, knock on wood, I think it'll definitely shake it up, and hopefully more people will give it a chance because it's really, really good. American Crime Story Impeachment here. I like the show a lot. I mean, FX does dramas incredibly well. They do, the anthology series really well, of course, coming off of American Horror Story. This is American Crime Story now, and Impeachment was the season that I saw with the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal at the center of it. I mean, controversial in that regard. A lot of people obviously not really interested in seeing something so political nowadays, but as far as just like judging it on its own merits, acting and all those other credences that you would give any other TV show, this is done at a very high level and it's very entertaining. So can't hate on it too much. Got a great tier. American Crime here, arguably the most overlooked drama on this entire list. This is A1 tier. This is borderline God tier, honestly. I mean, it is just so well done. Such a high bar hit. Ridley Scott, of course, is the director here. I mean, a legendary film director coming to TV here and doing it in such an incredible way. Super poignant, super relevant topics as well, with just every single type of policy or any sort of major talking point within U.S. politics nowadays is covered in some fashion here, just at a super high bar and an incredibly high level. Super intelligent, mature show as well. Like, really can't say anything bad about it again, so gotta go A1 tier. American Ninja Warrior here, a summer favorite for sure, coming off of Ninja Warrior in Japan and then adapting it to the U.S. audience here. I'm gonna go great tier. Super entertaining. This is one that you watch very passively. There's definitely some people I know that are like hardcore that have to see it every single season, that follow certain contestants that come back every season and such. But this is one for me. If it's on, yeah, I'll watch it, I'll check it out, but it's not something I'm gonna engage with hardcore style where you're following it throughout the entire season. Throw it on in the background, have a nice time for an hour, just watching, again, as a sport, watching these people do just incredibly athletic things that you obviously wouldn't be able to do. And it's just very, very impressive, these obstacles that they can get behind. Really something. So I'm gonna go great tier there. American Pickers there. Again, ignoring the controversy with this one, I'm gonna go good tier here. This was kind of a guilty pleasure back in the day. It's not really something I'd watch like super hardcore. I mean, this has like 20 something seasons, so I definitely haven't seen every single episode of it. But again, something you throw on in the background just to kill some time with. It can be kind of interesting to see the history behind these things as well. Some of these, like, every show that came out in the 2000s that was trying to do basically Storage Wars, right? And that's all this is essentially. It's just another one of those. But this one does it in a way where it's like kind of focuses on the history more, so that can be interesting at times. So I'll go good. American Dad here, another one I'll go good tier with. I'm not as big on this one as like Matt is, or as I am with some of the other Seth MacFarlane stuff like Family Guy, of course. But it gets some chuckles out of me every now and again, so real good tier there. American Housewife, I'm gonna go, it's definitely between good and great there. For it being as kind of overlooked and underrated as it is, I'll go great tier. I think Katie Mixon really came out of her shell with this one, really kind of expanded on what she was known for with Mike and Molly and Eastbound and Down, really kind of playing a different character than those shows. So that was really something that was cool to see. And man, ABC, like, if they had just kept this around for at least like 1 or 2 more seasons, I think they would have been better off this year, because man, this could have taken over for like the Wonder Years or something. We didn't have to suffer through that, because this was still a good show even in its last season. It was still holding up pretty well, so I'm gonna go great tier. American Idol here. You've heard me talk about this show endlessly here, and the impact it had, the popularity of it, how it affected me and my taste in TV and my taste in music, how it had just a chokehold on TV and the music industry for so long. The longest running show consecutively at #1 in the year-end ratings there for 8 years in a row, which is just absolutely monstrous there. I mean, you really can't say anything bad about American Idol in that regard, just as far as its impact goes. So obviously going to go God tier here, no questions about that. America's Funniest Home Videos. It's a legacy show for sure. Rest in peace, Bob Saget, once again. But I don't know, man. Like, it was a product of its time. You know, back in the 90s, makes sense why this was as popular as it is. But with the age of the internet and every single outlet that just does fail content, you know, funny funny videos like that, this thing is just incredibly dated. And watching it now, it's just like boomers don't understand that the internet exists, you know, because the median age for someone watching it in 2022 is 75 years old. But, you know, but it's still incredibly popular for ABC. So, you know, it can't hold too much of a grudge against it, but it's just not something I would voluntarily watch. America says here, depending on who you ask, this is either one of the best game shows or one of the worst game shows. I like it, but in very small doses. I'll put it in good tier. I actually watch it more on TikTok than anything else because they have an official page for it. Watching it in very bite-sized content like that, just like one round at a time, can be a lot of fun, but sitting through an entire episode of this does get pretty repetitive after a while. So that's kind of my take on it. The Andy Griffith Show, terrible, absolutely awful. Just, I mean, yeah, it's, you know, it has the legacy behind it and such, but quality-wise, like, oh my god, there's so many better shows from the 50s and 60s. Like, why are you wasting your time with this one? Nah, get it out of here. Bad tier for sure. Anger Management with Charlie Sheen. I'm gonna go good tier. You know, it had its moment. Maybe embroiled with obviously the controversy with Charlie Sheen is some people would claim that's the only reason why it was as big as it is, which is kind of understandable given that the quality was pretty middle of the road. But, you know, if you're a fan of 2.5 Men, you know, I'm sure you're going to like this. If you're a fan of Charlie Sheen, I'm sure you're going to like this. There's nothing really that, you know, what you see is what you get. You know, it's not going to pull any surprises on you. So I'll say good tier for that. Aqua Team Hunger Force, going to go good tier as well. It's definitely not something that I saw all that much of. This is, you know, definitely on the lower scale as far as the amount that I've seen from any of these shows, but the little bits and pieces that I have seen are, you know, they're okay, so we get a good tier there. Archer, kind of between good and great. It's definitely got a little more weight to it for me just because of the legacy it holds and the fact that H. John Benjamin is really good in the role, so I guess I'll go great tier. Yeah, I mean, for an animated, you know, adult cartoon, it's definitely kind of in the middle of the pack comparably, but just for, you know, again, judging on its own merits, it's pretty strong. So a good, great tier with that. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader here? I mean, this is an iconic game show from the 2000s there with Jeff Foxworthy, of course, as the host. I have not seen the reboot with John Cena, so I can't speak on that one, but with Jeff Foxworthy, of course, I mean, he was a really good pick for this. It wouldn't seem like it at the time, because I think at the time he was known for more of a stand-up, so it seems like a weird match, but he had really good, you know, genuine interest with the kids and, you know, good chemistry with them, so surprisingly a really, really solid choice for the host there. The contestants, some of them were just dumb as rocks, dude. They would fail on like the first question and it'd be like, you know, a second grade question or something, but some of them were very, very impressive, and the questions too were like surprisingly very difficult, because you think like, oh, this is a piece of cake, right? It's elementary school stuff. Everyone, you know, under the age of 10 should know this. And then you get tripped up on like a third grade chemistry question. And it's like, oh shit. So yeah, so it was surprisingly challenging there, and that made it fun to play along with. I'm gonna go great tier. I mean, it really hits all of the right buttons when it comes to a great game show. So really can't do anything wrong with that. Arrested Development, oh man, I'm gonna get some comments on this one for sure. It's a bad show, guys. It's very, very overrated, very overhyped. My buddy Mike over at Mike's Talks and Thoughts, of course, he, you know, had been hearing so many good things about it, hearing so many good things about Arrested Development. Big comedy fan, of course. Wanted to see, you know, if he was the right audience for it, so gave it a chance, and 5 episodes in was like, I don't think I can do this, man. I think I gotta bail on this show because it's just not working for me. And I agree, man. After just 1 episode, you can tell that this is just not gonna be it. But I can understand why people like it, because the cast is great on it. I mean, given their some of the other projects they've done, you'd expect this to be, you know, a slam dunk. But it's just something about the tone of it, the atmosphere that it holds. It's just not very good, you know. I'd honestly rather watch Schitt's Creek, to be honest with you, because they're basically the same storyline that's like, as far as the plot goes, it's essentially the same there. But yeah, just not very good. Not very good at all. Next up is Arthur here, super iconic, of course, from the PBS Kids era. I'm going to go great tier for sure. I mean, it definitely had a little bit of growing pains in that first season, very, very rough around the edges there. But once it really found its stride, I mean, it was unstoppable. The fact that it is the second longest running, or was formerly at least the second longest running cartoon ever, only behind The Simpsons, beating out I don't know what I was going to say, Seinfeld there. SpongeBob, South Park, Family Guy all are in the top 5 as well. But yeah, that coming in second place, they're only behind The Simpsons. They're absolutely wild. So for that alone, I mean, legacy-wise, got to go great tier. And like I said, once it found its stride, it was unstoppable. JonTron here, of course, another one similar to AVGN there, kind of that classic, gamer reviewer type of vibe there that you saw a lot back in the early 2000s. I'm going to go great tier with him. Maybe slightly overrated given some of the more recent output that he's had. I'm not really a fan of a lot of the stuff he's done in the past couple of years, but I mean, the classic JonTron episodes from back in the day are just, they're iconic. They're legendary. You can rewatch those infinitely, in my opinion. But some of the newer stuff, maybe a little more inconsistent. And again, ignoring some of his personal, politics and such, and some of his other controversies, just focusing on the show as a whole there. I'd say it's pretty solid. Definitely justified as far as like its impact it's made and how it inspired so many others that are huge now. So that's always a good thing to see. Next up is Chris Stuckman here. Compared to Sean Chandler, who we talked about earlier, Stuckman is way more just like pessimistic and just like angry and cynical, He just has a really different tone that comes across, and it almost makes you feel like, do you even like talking about movies at all? Do you even like the art of criticism? Because it feels like you're just angry to be angry, just for the sake of it. You don't really have any like real emotions, like real justifications or reasoning behind why you are. So I'm gonna go good tier because that aspect to it is kind of bothering a little bit, but there are definitely some elements to his business sense that I find really commendable, like the fact that he was partnered with a MCN for as long as he was, and then he branched off of that because he was like, no, I don't want to be censored. I want to talk very honestly about how I feel about the movie industry and be very open about my struggles with it and trying to break into it as a wannabe director and such. And for a long time, these giant corporations that he was under that, paid his salary and everything were like, no, you can't talk about that. It's going to just ruin this industry, you know what I mean? Because you hold so much power. And he broke away from that. He became independent, and he works, purely off of YouTube now. He doesn't have a salary with this Defined Media anymore. So, I mean, that's very commendable, and that's like fantastic for him. That he can, he has the ability to do that. But just his content itself just comes off really, like I said, it's very pessimistic, and almost like you wonder if what he is doing is just for the sake of trying to build the next step in his career, because he's been on YouTube for a very long time, and now he's kind of branching out, and he's about to film or direct rather his first major motion picture, which is fantastic for him. But it almost feels like YouTube now, his primary show is an afterthought compared to that, and he's just using it as a springboard to get to the next step. So I don't know, I kind of have some mixed feelings on it myself, but I can see why his fan base is pretty ride or die, because he definitely is very knowledgeable about movies and such, but just doesn't come off as a fan as much as he once did. So it's kind of my takeaway from it. America's Test Kitchen here. Oh man, me and my family watch this all the time. Another super iconic cooking show there. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it's pretty middle of the road, all things considered. I'm going to go good tier here. It's very conscious about the fact that its audience is probably not that familiar with cooking as a whole, because it's very by the book as far as how they operate stuff. I mean, they will go over every little detail an insane amount of times just to make sure that you know exactly how to, do all these little steps, all these trivial little things to get to the end product that they're after, instead of just improvising or using your, intuitions in cooking, which is how I feel like is the best way to do it myself. But the other thing with it is like the way that they just come off, some of the hosts, it's just extremely like, I don't even know what the word is, like extremely vanilla, like no personality, just very like classroom instructional type of vibe, if that makes sense, compared to like other stand-stir shows, like we were talking about Rachel Ray earlier. Like Rachel Ray, like I said, I'm not really a big fan of hers all that much nowadays, or, it doesn't really do much for me. But at least she has that very vibrant, kind of outgoing personality that makes her, very interesting to a certain crowd. America's Test Kitchen, though, they just have like absolutely none of that, no character behind them at all. So that's kind of what makes them just kind of middle of the pack for me. So good tier, is fair there. Auction Hunters, this is another just kind of like Storage Wars knockoff, like American Pickers, we said. So I'll just go good tier, kind of put them together in that same tier. Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'm gonna go great tier. I've only seen a little bit of this show, just the first episode, but that pilot, man, is pretty phenomenal. I will say that pilot is pretty damn good. The animation is absolutely outstanding. That is like the best aspect of the show, just visually how it looks. Absolutely striking, absolutely magnificent there. But the storyline, I could definitely see how, building off of that kind of what am I trying to say? The foundation there from the first episode, and kind of building a more intricate story arc later on. I could definitely see how they could do that extremely well there, and of course all the accolades and everything that it's built up over the years. Ranked as number 15 on the greatest shows of all time, I would say for a reason. So I'll say great tier there. Axe Cop here, super underrated, super overlooked, man. I mean, if you like adult animation, if you like Family Guy and South Park and such, definitely put Axe Cop on your watch list. You will not be disappointed, my friend. Nick Offerman here as the lead, absolutely terrific. That's something I've talked about in the past too, is like his versatility as far as the different characters he plays, the different mediums that he can be a part of, whether it's a drama, a live action sitcom, or a voice role like this. Really, really interesting to see how much different talents that he has incorporated into his acting abilities there. So, and X-Cop definitely one of the most underrated, like I said. So, all around a great show. The same cannot be said, however, for this next one we have up here, Henry Danger. Y'all already know. I mean, the thing is, like, even for kids, even if like you weren't even that aware of it, it would still come off like extremely cringy, you know what I mean? I've seen posts online talking about like modern day Nickelodeon or modern day Dan Schneider and such, and there'll be people that are like, 10 or something, or they're, in middle school or something like that, and even they can understand that Henry Danger is not good, you know what I mean, from such a young age, which is crazy. We talk about all the time, like, how the 2000s era TV shows for kids, especially on Nickelodeon and Disney Channel and whatnot, were just so much more elite and just like so much better than what they have nowadays. And maybe it's not all true, maybe we're hyping ourselves up a little bit, but especially compared to Henry Danger, it would be the worst that we had out, and it would still rank miles ahead of this garbage. Like, get it the fuck out of here, man. Bottom of the barrel, indeed. Arguably the worst show on this entire list. Baggage here. I'll say Baggage it's in between good and meh. I'll go meh here. I always have a funny story about Baggage. Like, people will, they'll ask me about TV and such and tell me what is one of the most disturbing or like craziest things you ever saw on a TV show. I'll tell you Baggage here. And they're like, what's that? It's like, oh, this game show that Jerry Springer hosted back in the 2000s. It was a dating game show that he hosted on GSN. Like, I've never heard of that. So what makes it so crazy? Well, one of the contestants on the show said that the only music she ever listens to is Christmas music. And guess what? She was knocked out of the first round because this potential partner, this potential date that she had, he wasn't going to stand for that shit. Get her out of here, man. So yeah, that's my story with it. But yeah, it was just a super gimmicky show. 3 contestants would, kind of compete for the chance to date this other person, and they would have these pieces of baggage, which were supposed to be like secrets or, tropes about them, or like certain quirks that they had that were kind of, unusual or kind of weird in some way. And usually be like pretty trivial stuff like that. Like I only listen to Christmas music, which is like so crazy still. After like a decade of seeing that, can't get that out of my mind, right? But sometimes it'd be really dense, and it'd be like, I still live with my ex-wife or something, and it's like, whoa, 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 and you want to date me? No, that ain't gonna happen. So yeah, overall, I'll go meh tier because it is pretty memorable, I will say. Like I have a lot of examples from that, but it's definitely not something I would seek out nowadays, not by a long shot. Band of Brothers, I'm going great tier. I'm not really a war guy, but I mean, this was done at such a high level there. Of course, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks executively producing this one. I mean, they got their talents on lock there. David Schwimmer is phenomenal in this role. I mean, all signs point to it being a pretty damn good show. Barefoot Contessa here, another Food Network show, Stand and Stir. I'm going to go with good tier as well here. I got nothing against Ina Garten. I think she's just kind of okay. It has a little bit more of personality, but very much like a wine mom and like a book club type of person. That's kind of the vibe you get off of her. The most interesting anecdote I have with this one is that there's an episode where these people bid for this like auction charity sort of thing, and the prize is they get a luncheon with Ina Garten and 2 special guests that were, that was going to air on the show. And the guests in question were Alec Baldwin and Mariska Hargitay. And you can find clips of it on YouTube, and it is just the wild combination of people that makes it so interesting. And also, don't ask me why I know this, but Mariska Hargitay's favorite food is raspberries. I've heard her say that a billion times over in various interviews for some reason. And one of the dishes that she makes in this episode where she's one of the guests is a raspberry trifle just for her. So there you go. That's the most interesting thing I can say about this show. Barney here, of course, another childhood show on PBS. I'm going to say Barney is meh tier. You can't really say it's bad per se because it's aiming for a really, really young audience. I mean, like preschool level audience. So can't really say it's bad per se, but it's just definitely not something I would watch nowadays. You know what I mean? Definitely not something. Matt has had a beef with the movie that they made, Barney's Great Adventure, for so long, which is so stupid and so trivial, but it's hilarious when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, Barney's whatever, so I'll go with that too. Batman the Animated Series here, man. We haven't had an A1 level show in quite some time now, so Batman, welcome to the A1 club here, because like after watching it for myself, it's like, whoa, you can really see now why everyone says this is arguably the greatest animated show of all time, because it really does have a lot of those boxes checked. Got excellent chemistry with all of the voice work and all the characters there, just play off each other incredibly well. The animation is dark and it's moody and it's got that noir style that works really well with this very dark cinematic tone that Batman has always kind of occupied in. And the action is great. I mean, there's just so many elements to it that come together perfectly with this one. Even if you're not a superhero fan like me, I'd say definitely I urge you guys to check it out. A1 tier for sure. Battlestar Galactica, pretty forgettable, pretty middle of the road here. I'm gonna go mad tier. Not really a sci-fi kind of guy, as I stated earlier, so I'm gonna say whatever for that one. Baywatch, same sort of thing here. Obviously, Baywatch is like, it's not meant to be taken seriously at all. It is not meant to be taken seriously whatsoever. It's super cheesy. It's super over the top. It definitely has like the 21 Jump Street sort of elements to it where it's like super over the top 80s cheese there, with like David Hasselhoff and such, Pamela Anderson, of course, iconic from the show. The only reason I've actually seen it is because Steph was a big fan of it, and over quarantine we found that there was a channel playing it a bunch over quarantine, over COVID, so she watched it, and naturally I saw a little bit of it myself, and I can see why it'd be like entertaining to watch a few episodes for, just to make fun of it, just to laugh at it a little bit. But if you're trying to take it seriously, if you're just judging it on its own merits of what it's attempting to do, yeah, just very, very middle of the road, fails miserably in that. So I'll go mad tier overall. Beat Bobby Flay. For some reason, this is like one of only like 2 shows that Food Network plays all the time. Talk about cable channels and how they have, the one show that was just a moneymaker for them that they just air constantly over and over again, whether it's SpongeBob on Nickelodeon or Teen Titans Go on Cartoon Network. For Food Network, for some reason, it's Beat Bobby Flay and Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. And I love Triple D, but Beat Bobby Flay is just, it's just so okay. It's just so milquetoast. No pun intended there. The thing about it is really Bobby Flay's personality. He just comes off so unlikable. Such a douchebag as far as like his arrogance and his ego. And I've just never been a fan of the guy personally. So having a whole show centered around him like this, not really my cup of tea whatsoever. Beat Shazam. I love Beat Shazam. I don't know why everyone rags on it. For some reason, Matt hates it, but I think it's awesome. I'm going to go in great tier with it. Jamie Foxx, super personable, super energetic guy. Great choice for the host there. Some of the contestants are dumb as shit, so it does have like those elements where it's like so bad it's good almost, where you just make fun of them. But the actual like trivia of it, just recognizing the songs, has that name, that tune, obviously influence from it. That's right up my alley, right? Music and TV coming together there. So I really have nothing against it personally. So I'm gonna go great tier. Beavis and Butthead here. Another one we got to go great tier with. Shout out to Mike as well. Really been into Beavis and Butthead lately. He's been watching a ton of it, so that's awesome to see. There's a popular video essay going around on YouTube here. This guy watching every single episode, commenting on it, which was a great video to see. Kind of a retrospective of Beavis and Butthead there. Mike Judge, super, super talented guy in general, so obviously a great show to represent his talents there. Becker here with Ted Danson, of course, one of CBS's older, fondly remembered sitcoms for sure. Doesn't have the same strength as like, my comparison, like some of their other 90s stuff, like a King of Queens or something like that, but certainly does have its moments for sure. Ted Danson, how can you not love him for sure? Pretty much every single one of his shows has been a home run, except for the one that we'll get to a little bit later on in this series here. But for sure, I think Becker is one of his strongest ones. Bernie Mac show. Bernie Mac, absolute legend. Rest in peace for sure. Bernie Mac for sure. Such a legend there. Rest in peace for sure. Got a great tier. This definitely has like the same sort of energy and the same sort of tone and atmosphere as like Malcolm in the Middle, but it's very much, Bernie Mac forward, which is great because he was just such a lovable guy and did some amazing stand-up for sure, like one of the original kings of comedy, of course, with Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, part of that crew. Just a really, really memorable show for sure. Came out around the same time as Malcolm and was on Fox, so kind of imitated that style, but took it in a different direction at the same time, so really innovative for sure. All things going great here. Best Time Ever with Neil Patrick Harris. I already talked to length about this one in filmography filing, but I think it's a good show overall. I think it stands up a little bit just in the fact that it was such a creative idea, having like a primetime variety show, very Carol Burnett-esque type of series there with Neil Patrick Harris at the helm, which was a great choice because he is so versatile. He can do a lot of different stuff and has that energy to back it up, but it just hasn't held up well, just even for the simplest fact that watching it when it's just pre-taped and not watching it live, just you lose something for it, which is very, very kind of disappointing in the sense that like you have this great, grandiose sort of energy coming off of Neil Patrick Harris and the audience is matched, but you don't feel like you're in the moment with them. So kind of loses something in translation there. But overall, still not a terrible show by any means. I'll say good tier. Very relevant show currently, Better Call Saul, on its final season here. According to Mike, it just aired arguably its best episode. Rockin' a Hard Place, I've heard, is amazing from season 6, so that's fantastic to see. From what I've seen, I'm going to go good tier because I've only seen one episode thus far, and I did enjoy it. Actually, you know what? No, let's pull that up to great tier. I think that's too low. Yeah, let's go great tier with it. I do enjoy the show, but I just haven't seen that much of it. So that's my argument there. Next up, Between the Lions here. This is an iconic show as well from PBS from back in the day. I'm going to say good tier, pretty iconic. Definitely had, a good sense of that education plus the entertainment value of it, kind of, bridging the gap there. That's definitely something that like a lot of these kids shows will try to do, and some will succeed and some will definitely fail pretty miserably there if they just focus in too much on one or the other. But Between the Lines always had a good sense of both there, so it's a good tier there. Beyond the Tank, I don't hate this show, but it really had no reason to exist, so I'll say met tier. Just a Shark Tank spinoff where they go and they kind of see the entrepreneurs in action. Like they'll visit like the warehouse or whatever, or they'll see like how the company's doing after X amount of time after it's been on the show and such. And like I guess that's kind of interesting. It works better as a segment within the show, which is what they do already, so I don't know why they needed this. Like I said, it just feels so unnecessary, and they only aired like 4 episodes of it. I mean, it wasn't on for very long at all, so it just seemed like a weird, side project that did not need to come into fruition at all. Epic Mealtime here, another classic cooking show from the YouTube space, from the web series space. I'm going to say good tier. A lot of people rag on Epic Mealtime. I always was very entertained by it as a kid, and even now, going back and rewatching some of those episodes. Very cool to see when they had guest stars on it, and sort of the novelty of that. I mean, a lot of big names. Adam Richman was on it from Man vs. Food. Gabriel Iglesias was on it. Of course, lots of different YouTubers they collabed with over the years. A great sense of community with this show for sure. Obviously, nowadays, I don't even know if they still do it, to be honest. I think Harley Morenstein is pretty much the only person left standing there, which makes sense because he was the OG, the guy that created it in the first place. But most of the other people have left at this point. Josh Elkin, who is like the lead chef behind it, has his own social media and such now. He does a lot of stuff on Snapchat, and TikTok is where he's most famous. And I watch him almost every day. I'm a huge fan of him, and obviously part of that comes from Epic Mealtime. But I know that him and Harley specifically have had this crazy beef over the years. They don't speak at all anymore. I don't know what happened exactly, but those two are just totally distant from one another. So the whole sort of crew has just gone their separate ways at this point, which is kind of upsetting. Always sad to see when such a big show ends up having its final moments like that. But even still, in its heyday, I always thought it was very entertaining. So I'll say good tier there. Big fan. Oh man, morally, I mean, it's arguably so because this show is deranged. I'll give it bad tier. I don't think it's that bad because the show itself is pretty innocent, but the whole idea, this was stan culture before stan culture was a thing. So the gimmick of it was they had celebrities come out, and then they had just a normal contestant who was a super huge fan of these celebrities, and they would ask them trivia questions about the celebrity in person. Or in question rather. So if it was what movie did this person do with, all these other people or something like that, or in this interview from GQ from 2005, what did this person say about, I don't know, Fieros, or just the most random shit, right? And it was super trivial stuff that no person regularly would know, except for if you're a huge fucking stan of these people. And these contestants would go absolutely ape shit because they would know every single question, right? Which is insane to me. And most of the time, the contestant, or the celebrity rather, wouldn't even know, and the fan would, because that's how much they pay attention, and that's how much the stan culture has gotten to these people and such. So that's why I say morally very questionable, but entertainment wise, it was very middle of the road. So kind of balancing those out at the bad tier there. But just what a weird idea for a show, you know what I mean? What a weird idea for a show. There's literally times where like as well, like I just remember they wouldn't even like the game wouldn't have even started yet, and the fan in question would just be like spewing off facts that they knew about the celebrity, and you could tell that like some of them, like one was Kristen Bell, I remember, like it just pans back to her and she is just incredibly uncomfortable. Just so freaking uncomfortable with the environment, because it's like, how do these people know my home address? How do these people know how do these people know where I was at on Thursday grocery shopping or something? It's just the craziest shit, you know what I mean? So just incredibly weird show. So yeah, I'm gonna go bad here. Big Mouth here, absolutely unmistakable, let me tell you. I'm gonna go A1 tier. Honestly, do not know a single person that has seen the show that does not enjoy it. I mean, it has a 100% rating every single season. It just got a spin-off, absolutely dominating Netflix for sure. Arguably the only Netflix show, very relevant topic as well, alongside Stranger Things, that's actually doing anything for them and keeping them afloat right now. I'd say Big Mouth is definitely part of that. But like people that just refuse to watch the show, that has just surprised me, like that there is anyone objecting to it, because it's not really that bad when you really think about it. I think the perception of it is worse than in actuality, like what it shows, because I think people are like, oh, it's just a bunch of like kids having sex and it's like really graphic and the, you know, cartoon pubes and shit. Like it's not really like that. It's like a coming of age story more or less. So people's perception of it is really warped, and I don't know why they just refuse, or why they do refuse rather, to just give it a chance, you know? I mean, that's all I can ask for, is just give it a chance. So I love it. I think it's A1 tier for sure. Big Sky here. I'm going to go great tier with Big Sky. I mean, it was fantastic in its first season. I haven't seen anything from season 2, so can't judge it. And I don't know 100% if it's going to make it to season 3. And I have some mixed feelings about if it does or it doesn't. I've talked about it in previous videos. But season 1, I can tell you, at least the first half of season 1, I mean, some of the best dramatic TV like ever, just period, right? I mean, the twist in that pilot is just amazing there. The acting is fantastic. I mean, so many iconic performances and so many great, you know, performers that from other shows that you know that are coming on this one that are doing such different roles and such different characters than you had seen them in previous shows. Very versatile. I mean, just so many great elements to it, but I just can't get past the fact that like the back half of season 1 was just really icky and just really inconsistent. And then I just haven't seen anything from season 2, and I've heard really mixed things about it. So I think it did kind of fall off a little bit, but at least that first half season, like the first 10 episodes, if you just watch the first 10 episodes, then you're good. You know, you will know when to stop. There's a really obvious midpoint where you can safely hang it up. So at least if you get to that point, I think it's definitely worth it. It has that like 13 Reasons Why sort of reasoning behind it. Is like the first season was awesome and then kind of just went from there. Big Time Rush here. A lot of big shows in a row here, you can see. Big Time Rush, I'm going to say great tier as well, kind of moving up the ladder there. I mean, not as memorable as like iCarly or Drake and Josh or something, obviously, but I mean, for Nickelodeon, between this and Ned's Declassified, Scott Fellows as well, another big name from Nickelodeon that I don't think gets enough recognition there. Really, really interesting idea for a show for sure. And then tied it in with the music. That was a lot of fun to listen through as well. And again, kind of right up my alley, right? TV and music there. So for sure, I'll say great tier. Big Brother here, man, I hate to do it, but Big Brother has to be bottom of the barrel. I mean, I don't know, honestly, which is worse. I've always said Survivor is worse, like, as far as, like, which one I would rather see between this or Survivor for CBS reality stuff. But honestly, I think I have a little more respect for Survivor just in terms of, like, it being on as long as it's been on for, and the fan base is being like extremely passionate for it, because I do not see that sort of level for Big Brother. I know there are some people out there that are like that, but it's just not as big as Survivor. So for me, this is an easy one to throw a huge thumbs down for. Bottom of the barrel, get it the fuck out of here. Terrible show. The biggest loser here, This is a very different idea for a show as well. I'm gonna put this in the good tier. I enjoyed it. There was a period for like 2 or 3 seasons where I was pretty religiously a fan of it. Um, the one thing with this show is like it's interesting because I don't know when it started exactly. It was like sometime in the mid 2000s. This was like around the time when there was a lot of media popping up about obesity and healthy eating and trying to change the way that you looked at food and how all of that like culture started kind of becoming more relevant and mainstream. I mean, like Super Size Me had come out around that time, and obviously Michelle Obama and her policies was kind of around that time, all within the 2000s. That was really, like I said, starting to spring up rather, as far as being a little more mainstream. And this show probably wasn't like the best representation of how to deal with that because it was so extreme, and it was such like a super niche sort of way to approach it, like just going cold turkey, like hardcore working out for 10 hours a day, probably isn't going to be very realistic for most people. But I think it did kind of give, I'm sure, some people the motivation to actually change their ways. So that's always good because I've never struggled with weight, but I know people that are very close to me that have. And a show like this, again, probably isn't like the best representation, but if it got even like one person to think differently, I mean, that's a success. And just for entertainment purposes, I always thought it was really cool how they really did celebrate the transformations, right? They really went all in on like being very supportive and being very positive, these people, how they change their ways. So, I mean, I can't really hate on it for that. So it's not something I watch nowadays. It'd probably be very problematic if it came out nowadays, because again, the way that they like approached it. But I'd say good tier for its heyday. I thought it was a really solid show. Movable Feast with Relish here. This is another PBS cooking show similar to America's Test Kitchen. I think this one's just kind of meh tier. They have a rotating cast of people that have hosted this show, and like they're always in a different city, so they always have a different celebrity come out and host each episode, and then they'll talk about the city they're in, the food culture around there, and they'll have a big feast with some of the locals there and kind of show off what the food culture is in like New Mexico or Boston or New York or wherever they're at. So it's kind of interesting to see, the regional kind of variations that they'll showcase with this show. But again, most of these hosts are just pretty vanilla, pretty plain. Not the most memorable show for sure. Bill Nye the Science Guy. You got to go great tier. I mean, you got to go great tier with Bill Nye. I mean, this is a childhood favorite for sure. It's weird because like I feel like everybody likes Bill Nye, but no one goes out of their way to watch it because it was like, obviously the environment where you'd be watching this in school, you always wanted Bill Nye, but no one liked it enough to watch it outside of that environment. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know anyone that would just like go home and put on Bill Nye, but if you were at school and Bill Nye came on, oh my fucking God, that was the best day ever, So that's kind of weird how that, the dichotomy there. But yeah, I mean, Bill Nye was great. Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. I'll go meds here. It was pretty gimmicky. Travel Channel always had like, just kind of okay shows. I was like Man vs. Food personally, but this one was just kind of middle of the road for me. Black Mirror. Ooh, there's going to be some people that have problems with this, but this is going to go all the way at the top, climbing up the ladder, going to God tier, man. I mean, arguably better than The Twilight Zone as far as a anthology series, like kind of that horror, thriller type of vibe to it. Obviously more modern day with like the AI technology, computers, all that kind of stuff. Very relevant show and very eye-opening as far as some of the stories that are introduced that you can draw parallels to that are going on in the real world now. That's like kind of spooky, really makes you think. So definitely God tier for sure. Black AF, Netflix mockumentary with Kenya Barris there from Blackish, and then Rashida Jones as the other lead there from Parks and Rec. I guess I'll say good tier. It's kind of between good and meh, honestly, but I mean, the cast is obviously really good there. The biggest problem with it is like it's just not meant for me. You know, it's plain as day. It's not meant for me. It's definitely not targeting someone like me. So there's definitely things about it that like I just can't fully connect with or relate to because of who I am. And you know, that's fine. That's fine. I don't have to relate to every show, but even on its own merits, it should still be at least funny, right? As a sitcom, don't really find a lot of laughs out of it, so that kind of pulls it down a little bit. But yeah, I can respect what they were going for here. I can see what they were going for sure. And then speaking of Blackish, we have Blackish here. This one is tough because I've talked about this many a times before. The first half of the show, like the first like 3 to 4 seasons, are incredible, like easily justified as one of the best sitcoms. And then it just crashes and burns going down. And by the end of the season, man, it was just awful. It actually recently just finished here, and I heard nothing about the finale. Even as like once a really hardcore fan, I didn't bother to watch it. It only got like 2.5 mil as far as viewership goes, which is pretty big for the season in question, but it's nowhere near the peak that they had way back in the day. So it just went out such with a whimper because it lost so much credibility when it introduced COVID. I mean, that was really the nail in the coffin for it. All things considered, I'll put it at good tier. I think is a fair balance between those. But man, and this one is like whenever people say, "What's a show that had so much potential and then they just absolutely blundered it?" Like that's the example I give this Blackish, because man, the drop off it had was just so steep, so severe that like no one talks about this show nowadays. Not a single person cares. Just crazy. And then another Black show we have here is Black White. Shout out to Jarvis Johnson here on YouTube for showcasing this one on his channel. He kind of does like commentary type stuff, like Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez type videos. But he has a whole series on Twitch now where he reacts to episodes of the show. This was super controversial back in the day. It came out back in like 2006 or something, like mid 2000s. And the gimmick was they have a white family and a black family, and they would put makeup on them to make them appear as though they were a black family and a white family. And then they have them go out in public and interact with people and see what happens, right? And get a different perspective on what it's like to be white or black in America. And needless to say, a lot of problems with that. A lot of problems with that for sure. I mean, a respectable idea, I suppose, an interesting concept for sure, but just horribly executed, obviously. And like when you have the white guy in black makeup just spouting the N-word because he can, yeah, that's not it's not a good thing at all. So I'll say bad tier. I mean, morally, obviously, not a great representation whatsoever. But I got to give a little bit of props because it is a very interesting idea, at least. Something that should be explored, but just a terrible execution of it. Bless This Mess, very meh tier. I mean, Dax Shepard is awesome, but he was not enough to save this show, man. This was not a good example of like an ABC show that should have been, I mean, rightfully canceled, right? Because it was just so blah, just so middle of the road. Bless the Heart's kind of the same thing there. I'm going to go meh as well on Fox. They're one of their animated comedies there. Just kind of whatever. Blind Spot here. Ooh, taking me back with this one, man. This was a drama that I was into for quite some time. I watched the first 2 or 3 seasons pretty religiously. And then I think after that, I just started, that was around the point where I started working. So didn't have time to keep up with any TV shows for a long time. There was a period where I started Kroger and I was still in high school between late 2016 and early 2018 when I was still doing high school, where I just completely fell off with everything TV. I just did not watch anything, and so that was when Blind Spot was really hitting its stride. So I saw the first 2 seasons or so pretty routinely, and then I just completely fell off of that. I just could not keep up with it. Never really bothered to go back because it got kind of gimmicky towards the end of the second season from what I remember, but I do like the premise of it though. Is this chick wakes up in the middle of Times Square and she's got tattoos everywhere, but she has no idea who she is, how she got there, and so the CIA comes in and kind of scoops her up and has to solve this mystery, and all the clues are inked on her body and stuff, so they like kind of, you know, use that to get to the truth of what happened to her and stuff. Really interesting idea, but you know, kind of forgettable, kind of just, you know, your typical action show. It was on for a while. It was on for 5 seasons. I don't hear anybody talk about it though. I mean, it was just a blip on the radar. So, you know, make of that what you will, but I'll say good tier. Blue Bloods here, I'm gonna go great tier. Really, really enjoy Blue Bloods. Of course, Tom Selleck is fantastic there as Frank Reagan. Legacy character is phenomenal there. One of the longest running as well. It's currently in its 12th season, which is wild to think. Definitely going to go down as one of the longest running TV dramas out there. It's definitely going to get renewed for sure for number 13 because ratings are still very strong after all this time, which is crazy, and rightfully so because it's a terrific show. And I think for this last part, we're coming up on an hour and a half here, so we're going to stop it with this last one here for now, which is going to be Blue Mountain State here, Spike TV sitcom here. Kind of an interesting one to end off with, but I'll say good tier. You know, I've seen some bits and pieces of the show. It got me some chuckles every once in a while. It's not really something I would seek out because I'm not really a sports guy, but it's just a really goofy show. It's very much like that, you know, 2000s, like, frat boy humor, right? Like, it's just very, like, you know, over the top and goofy and silly like that. But it was fun. It is fun back in the day. So, all right, folks, that is part 1 for every single show that I've seen on this tier list here. Already, we got a fantastic selection of different shows here. We got a nice variety all throughout some of the God tier there. Most, of course, bulk of it is going to be naturally in the great and good tiers. And then we got a couple, of course, in the bottom of the barrel there. Henry Danger and Big Brother. Get them out of here. Go away. We don't like you. We don't want to see you here representing all these other great shows there. And we still got plenty more to go through. And look at that list. So we will definitely see you here back for part 2 very soon here. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And we'll see you in the next one.